then he comes back again, and he says, the kingdom is at hand, repent, and what he's meaning when he says repent is to change your evil ways. And then he disappears again. They can't find him. And he comes back one more time and he gives them the same message and everything. And they ask him, well, what are you talking about? What is this repent thing and everything? And he said, like your behavior, the way you're treating your brothers and sisters on the planet. And what happens, say the publicans and the lawyers and even the rabbis and the teachers, he gave them suggestion to maybe not take more than you should when you're dealing with your people. The tax collectors were Jewish people, you see. The Jewish people were under the Roman rule. And so then the taxpayers would go out, collect their taxes, and give it back. And a lot of times they weren't really honest and straightforward with what monies they were getting, because they had some power. He says, that's not really right. We need to start, honoring one another. And then to the soldiers, he says, don't do called for violence. Just don't do random violence. Because they were like in a position of power too, and anger and frustration in their lot in life. And what he was beginning to plant these seeds of Jesus, of brotherhood. You see, race consciousness was very hard at that time. They weren't that far from child sacrifice. And they were in survival mode most of the time. Their nation had been in slavery for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they had lost their connection with God. And they had just gotten harder and harder and harder in their consciousness. And so John's job was to start putting a crack in that consciousness. See, chipping away at it so that when the king is on his way, and the king is love, Jesus. So when Jesus comes, that Christ love comes, that it can go in, so that it can go in and touch the hearts of man. And because at the same time Jesus was doing all his work, he Christed all his chakras, and his body and his emotions, and his vibration was so high that when he came through, the people wouldn't even recognize that. It would have been just too much. So John, being that vibration of the people of the earth, when he planted those seeds, they could be accepted. But see, that was John's job, to crack that race consciousness, to prepare the way for love, the Christ. And it's a powerful, powerful mission, and they would always ask him, are you the Christ? He said, I'm not the Christ. I'll baptize with water, but the one who follows me is going to baptize with Spirit, to begin to transform. And so in essence, what they were doing, John was preparing them for a new level of consciousness. You see, a new way of living, a new way of seeing themselves, one another, and what life is, to prepare the way so that when the Christ came, when the love enters our heart, that love is what begins to cleanse the temple, you see, to begin to lift out the faulty thoughts and beliefs and memory that we hold that isn't really the truth that we are, spiritual beings, that we are sons and daughters of God. To move into a new level of consciousness. And that was the preparation age. And now we move into a new age once again. See, that was the Piscean age. We move into the Aquarian age. This is a new age again. And we're being asked to take another step. we're being asked to expand a little bit more now, to prepare for a new level of consciousness. So maybe in 2,000 years we learn that we do have love within our hearts, that we are divine, we are spiritual beings. This round, this age, to begin to live it, to walk it, to allow love to be king, the Christ sitting in our heart, allowing all of our words and actions, manifestations to be grounded in that unconditional love of God. Jesus' postulate, love is Son of God. You see, so we've got that within us now. Now we begin to walk and demonstrate that. And so as we prepare for this new consciousness, we can look and see our world is kind of preparing for it now as the old's giving way to the new. But we all have our individual parts to play. You see, we are integral to the whole. One thing, this was in our newsletter, and Cindy had wrote it, and we talk about the microcosm and the macrocosm, the all, and the microcosm, that little part of the all. Well, we're a microcosm of the macrocosm. But the interesting concept was that the microcosm, when the microcosm changes, the macrocosm changes, you see? And we are so kind of programmed to believe that there's this big macrocosm that's creating us and controlling us. You see, we're the creator sons and daughters of God. So we've got to stand forth into that role now. See, that's what this age is all about. And then we take that step of brotherhood up another level to really communicate with one another from a heart, not from our head. When we say, hey, how are you doing today? From a heart, connect with their heart, and then listen to them. Not here and then to the next one. Hey, how you doing today? How you doing today? You doing okay? Doing okay? You see? We're not really connecting. And if we just learn to breathe, connect with someone, how you doing today? We're giving them love, we're receiving their love. You see? And the love lifts us. And now we can begin to communicate on a higher level of consciousness. So we're being asked to live at higher levels of consciousness. And the main foundation stone, love. Love, 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 love. I don't do this anymore. I used to. And the Spirit was teaching me, Patrick, what are you doing? But I used to like to argue with people. And I don't really argue with people anymore. But I used to really like to, argue with, I used to like to argue with Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists and Watchtowers. And, you're sitting at home and they knock on the door. And because, we know the Bible. Come on, hey. And so for every verse that they pick and choose, I could pick 10, you see. And it wasn't even a sport. You see what I'm saying? Because the truth. You see, I just go always back to love. God of love. You see, when you go back to God of love, then we cannot judge. The judgment gets thrown out. You see? And we're in love, you accept. And so it was just like, we can't change anyone's mind and they can't change ours. So finally Spirit goes, what are you doing, Patrick? You're wasting time and really probably creating not good karma for yourself. So I said, okay, I'll do that.